Good morning. See if I can shout louder than the people in the next room. My name is Steve Goldsmith. I'm the moderator for this morning's discussion. As you know from yesterday, let me just start briefly with this instruction on we'll take questions through the app. If you haven't done it already, would you download the SCEWC app and click on the Ask and Vote option. We're the governance session. It'll ask for your room. We are governance. And then please send questions which will find their way up here to the tablet that we'll use after the first set of speakers for our conversation. So SCEWC and governance. So this morning we've got a series of speakers, a break and two moderating sessions. Let me start with just a few brief observations. I am honored to be able to moderate. I was mayor of a city in the United States, Indianapolis, and deputy mayor for operations in New York City for Mike Bloomberg. I'm now a professor of government at Harvard, and I run a program on smart city innovation. The conversation this morning is about data governance, but I think just for the next 2 or 3 minutes, it might be helpful to orient how we're thinking about the use of data, right? Because governing data means governing it for what purpose, right? And so the purposes for which government is now using data have changed pretty remarkably. I want to start with this because this is a great book that I wrote, and I'm sure you'll all want to buy it, but it's on a new operating system for government. And the theory of the book and the theory of the session is, right, if we're going to operate government differently, what standards should apply to the data that we use for that operation of government? And let me just look at it in this sense. So it feels to me like there are 4 specific uses that we may want to think about as it relates to data. In the upper left-hand corner where it says UX, and this is the theme of our next 2 speakers, is how do we organize the data around the user experience? And that definition of user, at least as I mean it up here, is not just the government user, and it's not just the user, meaning the resident of a city, it's the user of the data more broadly. So how do our public employees get their data? What use experience do they have, and what do our residents of our communities have as well? Below that is another important aspect, it feels to me, that which makes the conversation about data very complex, and that is to say that we're moving in many of our more advanced civil service countries and most of the countries around the world to a situation where we expect our public employees to exercise their discretion to solve problems. Now that may sound obvious, but previously, before access to big data, much of the public employees' work was compliance driven, right? They did a set of activities. They had very narrow amounts of data. So if we think about data governance, I would suggest we need to think about it in terms of how are we making our employees smarter, and how do we govern data with respect to that. In the acting in time, another sense of how to use data is to say, all of us are under pressure from our citizens to deliver better services, and the digital revolution allows us to move to these from these paper-based sequential systems to a digitally based concurrent system where acting quickly and in time makes a difference. People's time makes a difference. How do we regulate? How do we preempt problems? How do we solve those problems even before they occur? What's the use of data in predicting a problem, not just responding to a problem? And then if we look at all of that together, we'd say we're now in really a revolution in terms of public service. It's a revolution that says we're moving from compliance to discretion. The rules are changing. And it's not just in this conversation you'll listen to over the next couple hours. It's not a question of just how to govern the data that's inside the 4 walls of the city. It's an issue about how to manage the data throughout the community. So if we're thinking about data governance, we're thinking about governance, not just government, but governance. And any active city operates with a network of partners, nonprofits, state, federal, and individuals, and how do we manage that data as well. So we have a terrific couple speakers to start with before the break that will deal with this issue. And I'd like to begin first with introducing to you as our first speaker the former three-time deputy mayor. In the United States, you're just a deputy mayor. In Australia, you're a Lord Deputy Mayor, right? So the former Lord Deputy Mayor of the City of Melbourne, now a councillor for the City of Melbourne, the chairperson of the committee with jurisdiction over hospitality and related activities. Melbourne has been an international leader with respect to smart cities. And please join me in welcoming Susan Riley from Melbourne.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. And on behalf of the City of Melbourne, it is my pleasure to be in Barcelona for the Smart City Expo World Congress. Now, since arriving in Barcelona last week, I had the chance to explore this beautiful city, and in many ways it reminds me of Melbourne. Now, I meant to click and, I clicked twice. Okay, I'll continue. And like Barcelona, Melbourne is championing the next generation of smart cities, which is why I'm delighted to be here this morning to speak on a subject that I feel so passionate about: how we can use knowledge sharing, technology and human-centred design to create places where people prosper, love to live, to work and to play and to visit. Central to the success of the City of Melbourne's smart city approach is our use of open data to facilitate innovation across the city. Now, the visualisation and activation of city data is an effective tool to engage Melburnians in the city's past, present and future. This citizens' engagement is absolutely critical. We focus on taking a people-led approach to ensure we use our leading digital and data capabilities to solve real community problems. Now, before I go on in detail, please let me brag about my beautiful Melbourne. Melbourne is the most nimble of cities with an extraordinary ability to reimagine and reinvent its future. We are the fastest growing city in Australia. More than 928,000 people inhabit our city on an average day, and we welcome more than 2 million visitors each year. For 7 years in a row, we were ranked the most livable city in the world. Vienna won it last year, but I'd like to put Vienna on notice to say that we want the title back. So we will work extremely hard to make sure that happens. We are also recognised as a global knowledge city, and last year Melbourne was named the world's Intelligent Community of the Year. But if we want to retain this status and these accolades, we have to plan to remain livable. Data is critical now more than ever in that process. We must continue to be adaptable, continue to embrace ideas and possibilities. Did that new slide come up then? Yes? Okay. In landscape of a rapid growth in our city and worldwide, nothing will change the way cities function, the way they generate wealth, the way the people lead their lives, as much as the digital revolution. Smart cities are places where the use of technology improves the quality of people's lives, where our experience of the city is enriched. Like the introduction of smart bins in our CBD to be more effectively managed waste and recycling, while all rubbish trucks off our streets and laneways, and that is huge to get the trucks off the street. But at the City of Melbourne, it's not about technology for technology's sake. We are being smart about how we leverage digital tools to help our community and customers. There are some of the key considerations we have when we look to the future: social equity, a changing climate, urban density, and changing demographics, to name a few. And these challenges are huge opportunities for innovation. Knowledge was never at the heart of our city in the way it is now, and intellectually and creative effort was never so vital to our city's existence and prosperity. Our knowledge economy contributes almost 60 billion to Melbourne's gross local product. The rate of employment in the knowledge sector continues to grow, accounting for more than half of the job growth in our municipality over the decades. The City of Melbourne has a robust smart city approach to drive innovation and improve how we support our community, driven by a strategy of publishing and animated city data to foster a community that is engaged and informed about our development and future direction. Our policy on data is open by default. We know we cannot take a unilateral approach to achieving our smart city goals. A well-equipped city of residents, businesses, students and researchers is critical to our success. Often our role is an enabler of these innovations, experimentation and problem solving. To achieve this, we bring data to life, transforming how our community understands and uses city data. A suite of initiatives are being delivered to drive tangible innovation both within and outside of council. We are a leading open data program. So far, we have made more than 200 data sets available to the public. Now, this includes data on pedestrian counts, proposed developments, parking availability, infrastructure, the environment and sustainability. This data is invaluable for our retailers. For example, we can show them how many pedestrians are walking past their store each day, and for shoppers, how many car parking spaces are vacant. The data is available to browse year-round, and we share a summary of some of the information through our Census of Land Use and Employment, or CLUE. The open CLUE data shows the city's changes of land use and employment from 2002 to 2016. An open data platform is a fundamental condition for allowing new ways of collaboration to solving the big issues in our city. We established an open data by default data policy position in 2014. Now, to be successful, a strong data governance model is critical to harness community feedback and to continue to refine our many different open data sets which power creative city solutions. By opening up our data sets, we have realised more opportunities for collaboration, particularly with our academic networks. We have the data resources and experience, while they have access to considerable academic acumen and skills. The relationship has had benefits both ways, with council gaining new data insights and students gaining practical industry experience for their portfolio. Bringing these together will undoubtedly provide significant benefits, not only for a wide range of organisations, but for a city overall. We made data from 4,300 in-ground, on-street parking bays available through the open data platform. Now, these sensors detect vehicle movements in and out of individual parking bays, indicating where bays are available, the allowing length of time for each bay, and whether a bay is restricted to those holding a disabled parking permit. Currently, the data sets updates every 2 minutes. Having this information will help people park more efficiently, reducing time spent looking for available parking bays, which means improved traffic flow and lower emissions. Another initiative we launched in Melbourne is City DNA. It's an installation and exhibit to design to test ways for City of Melbourne to connect community and stakeholders to city data and insights in emerging technology such as 3D printed models, augmented reality, virtual reality, interactive maps and new data visualisation. Now, through using visual tools, we aim to engage the community in a new way to address priority topics such as urban growth precincts. It's about ensuring that all voices are heard and we plan for the future. We are also now able to visualise data in 3D. With our 3D development activity model, this interactive model gives a better understanding of cities and better decisions for the future. Through this development activity model, for example, we can see current and future proposed developments, so planners can look not just at the specific site and building type, but how it fits within its proposed environment. Melbourne is home to some of the best architects, designers and engineers in the world. And yes, I am bragging again, but if we engage more with our creative community, private sector and other councils, essentially working from the same data file and common 3D model, the design outcomes for Melbourne will undoubtedly be enhanced. We also launched a number of data activities, initiatives such as competitions, hackathons. Earlier this year, we ran an open innovation competition on city accessibility using relevant data from our open data platform. The aim was to encourage third-party development of digital tools to support city accessibility for all. Co-designed with members of our Disability Advisory Committee, the competition focused on specific community opportunities, including accessible parking, footpath navigation, wayfinding, and increasing flexibility and spontaneity in the city experience. The competition ran for 6 weeks, from February to April this year. 31 eligible submissions were received from innovators, entrepreneurs, business, and the broader community. 5 solutions were selected by an expert judging panel to pitch solutions. The first prize was awarded to a project called Melba, which paired our open data with smart assistants such as Siri, Google Assist, Amazon Alexa, to provide up-to-date information via voice, text and screen readers. The second prize was awarded to ClearPath, a turn-by-turn navigation system to assist the blind or visually impaired to navigate unfamiliar places, including permit events, construction site, textile ground surfaces and locations, and heavy pedestrian traffic. Through the provision and animation of data, the City of Melbourne Open Data and Innovation Program empowers the community to co-create the city's future and develop community-driven solutions to city problems. We are currently further piloting and testing the use of immersive virtual reality experiences, interactive augmented reality displays and design competitions to achieve deeper engagement and appeal. What makes our story unique? To know how we use it to connect with people, to enable meaningful change. Now, this might take the form of a profound learning or inspiration experience, as with Melbourne City DNA, or a platform for social or commercial innovation, as with our open innovation competition. Now, being a smart city is about more than economics and digital infrastructure. It's about getting to the heart of what truly matters in the daily life of a place we call home. So at the City of Melbourne, we consciously realigned our business to suit our customers with a consultative approach and those council goals in mind. Over the past 18 months, we developed a strategic investment to develop a digital service platform. This platform means we now have the ability to innovate rapidly when required and make life easier for Melburnians. For example, we developed online tools to enable the community to report graffiti for removal or report abandoned vehicles. Now, this work will continue to ensure our public spaces are kept free of hazard and are safe for all to use. We also have an online hub called Participate Melbourne to engage our community. In the decision-making process of our city's biggest projects, Participate Melbourne is part of our commitment to being a more accessible, transparent and responsive organisation. We share information about our decisions, our performance, and let our community know their views have influenced what we do. Another initiative we hang our hat on is our premier annual festival, Melbourne Knowledge Week. We recognise that knowledge is the new economy, and we are working to make it pervasive across all areas of business. Melbourne Knowledge Week helps us to engage the wider community in this work. In fact, the week-long festival has more than 50 local partners, 89 events across 5 themes, and more than 23,000 participants, and 46,000 live stream views on Facebook. But we need to keep asking our questions. What else can we do? What else might be possible in the local government level? To test new ways to deeply connect our community to their city. The Smart City approach of constant inquiry aims to generate social capital and make Melbourne the best it can be for the future generation. In closing, opportunities to create smarter cities are there, and they are numerous. We just have to be bold enough to take them on. With a focus on community needs and access to community needs, robust data and new technology, we are now in a position to completely imagine the systems that underpin the world's cities. Our energy and waste management, our safety, our security, transport, health and education, through our collective efforts today and into the future. Many creative thinkers in Melbourne and beyond will get behind the work that promise to improve significantly the prosperity, livability and well-being of our communities. Events such as this fantastic opportunity to speak to these new ideas, to spark, be inspired and what is possible, and more importantly, connect with like-minded people. Now, as with our open data, Melbourne is also open, and it invites you to experience what our city has to offer. So thank you for listening, and thank you for the invitation to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Now we're going to have a presentation before the discussion from Chairman Olshaus from Astana. He runs a government integrator on innovation, previously served as a minister in the national government and an expert on smart cities. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much to the organizers for this opportunity to speak on behalf of my city. It's a great honor. Before I start, I'd like to inform that we in Astana, we adopted the Smart City Framework Strategy last year, which is based on the European Smart City model, which concentrates on 6 major areas of development, including economy, people, utilities, mobility, security, etc. We have a number of projects for each area on which we concentrate in the city development, but today I was asked to speak a bit on our approach to manage data, what we do in particular to make the decisions in the city more data-driven. So this year we launched a so-called, we call it just big data project. It's a 100% local product developed by a company based in Astana. It's an information system which first collects, processes and analyzes data and helps us in our daily city management. So I'll share a couple of examples on how we do it. The clicker is slow, yeah. So the first step which we made was we constructed a demographic model which demonstrated us that the actual number of people inhabiting our city is 1,120,000 people, whereas official population of Astana is just over 1 million people. The results of the preliminary results you can see on the screen. What the system showed us is that the fertility will remain at the same level, but the most important consequence is that in 5 years' time there will be a serious shortage of schools. So the decision which we have to make now is to construct more schools, to build more schools so that we have enough number of schools in 3-5 years' time. The basic idea of this slide is the important thing is that we need to construct and build the social infrastructure around the human. So it's a human-centric system. We analyzed where people live. We analyzed where people work, where their children go to school. And based on this model, we came up with the solution on where to place and where to locate schools, hospitals, and other objects of social infrastructure. The same goes with, for the workload for hospitals. There's a standard set by our Ministry of Health on the number of patients which can be served by one doctor. So it's been set at 1,600 for the country, whereas for Astana it's just above 2,000. So we need to hire more doctors and construct more hospitals to decrease this number. And the system shows us how to do it and where to locate the hospitals and medical aid spots so that people can reach those spots easily. Another thing which the system helps us in dealing with is the self-employment. What is important is here we're talking about unofficial or unreported self-employment. What we found was that we have over 90,000 people not receiving pensions. So the question here is, what do they do to make their living? And we analyze all the social media, all the ad sites, and we found that those people, they either provide some services which are unreported, or work somewhere but do not report that they work there. So the decision for the city here is how to make those people make their activity legal, and we're working on this. Another thing which the system helps us with is we identify the skills demanded by the city. We analyze the, as I said, websites and all social networks, and we see what kind of professions, what kind of skills are sought by employers in Astana. And we provide all this information to our universities, to our schools, so that they can make certain changes so that to meet the demand from the market. And needless to say that we created a digital map of residential housing, so we can see each and every house in our city, how many people live there, and what kind of challenges people have in those particular houses. And we created a sort of rating of houses. So which houses are better in terms of overall quality, in terms of accessibility to social infrastructure, accessibility to business infrastructure, and we also observe and monitor the claims and requests of people which they leave in our 109 call center, and we can see it on the digital map on a daily basis. The heading goes without saying is we see those houses and flats which are rented illegally and provide information to respective authorities in our city. This one is in the process. We are still doing it, building and constructing algorithms. As I said, we see where people live, where people study, where they send their children to schools, etc., etc. So based on this information, using AI and machine learning, we are planning to construct a public transport system in the city. Hopefully next year we will share the results, because this we believe is a real data-based decision making, and the purpose, of course, to decrease the excess pressure on the transportation infrastructure. And last but not least, this is part of our open data policy. We see as I mentioned before, we see the houses, all the residential houses, all the commercial buildings, where they are located, and we see which houses and which blocks are in need of certain commercial infrastructure, like shops, business centers, etc., etc. So we provide information to the market so that businessmen can plan where to construct, where to open new businesses. So that's basically it, and I'm ready to answer questions, if any. Thank you. Stay here? Oh, okay.
You get the chairs up there?
Thank you.
Oh.
Well, you should sit in the middle. Where is he? Our moderator. Is he going to sit in the middle? I
One
think
more.
so.
Steven,
One more. Oh, there's three. I'm sorry. My fault. Thanks.
was it in the middle?
Once you sit there, I can look
so-
at you too. Oh, we gotta. Let's. Oh. All right. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the help with the furniture. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just. I got to get the tablet to see what the questions are. Can I have that tablet? Tablet with questions. Meanwhile, I'll make up my own questions. So we'll pretend these are your questions. But to both of you, right? So we're dealing with data governance, obviously, and we have all the benefits of open data. but we also have security and privacy issues. So both of you emphasized the user experience. So talk to the audience a little bit about how you're doing governance when some of the information may be provided by the citizens and some of the information is official information of the city, right? So how are you governing the rules about data when it's coming from sensor devices, some from the city, some from the residents? So maybe we'll start with you, Councillor, and then come to the chairman.
Well, we do have a very strict governance policy. I mean, what the city creates belongs to the city. How do we get that to the public? And that is because of the open data by default. So governance is extremely important, but at the same time, data is not to be kept just for a council or a capital city. It's there to be handed over to the people. So it's moderated. It's sure we don't give away private information, but at the same token, what we are collecting is for public knowledge and use.
So before I go to the chairman, let me see if I can make this more difficult, right? So,
Oh, please don't.
So you're in the hospitality business, right? So you're trying to make it easy for somebody to be in the restaurant business or whatever. So let's say that a restaurant customer gets ill at a restaurant. How do they add that information into the way you govern, right? So you've got data that originates from a resident about a licensee, and you have a health inspector's information. How do you combine those, and what rules would apply to one or the other?
This is for me.
Yeah.
Well, the health inspector is the key person. If a restaurant isn't being handled in a healthy, sustainable way that we respect and expect from a city, a health inspector then would report that to the council. Many times over the years of my knowledge, we've closed restaurants down. We send in inspectors, we check it, but sometimes it's not always about the venue. A person can get sick and not from food or water or wine or whatever. They could be genuinely ill. So it is a very fine line that we walk. But basically, we must make sure that that premises that is operating in a healthy manner.
So, Mr. Chairman, your uses were fascinating, excellent. Let me ask you about one or two in particular. So, you're using data to identify individuals in your economy who are there informally. And I think you said then you want to move them into the legal economy, right? So this is really interesting because you might be using highly personal data to identify who they are, and then how do you engage them in a way that doesn't make them hide their data even more, right? So you're identifying people in the illegal economy, you're trying to move them into the regular economy, which is a problem of every city in the world, every large city in the world. So what do you do when you identify them? How does that work?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you very much. First of all, this is a project which we launched just this year. Our company, Astana Innovations, we're in particular responsible for providing information and data to our mayor so that we can make the decision. Right, this is the first thing. Second thing, yeah, sometimes the data that we collect, it may be personal, but the numbers are staggering. If you just noticed, we got the data. Over 90,000 people are working illegally. So the budget is very important in this case, right? So a lot of financial resources are flowing just out of the official budget. How can we solve it? It's a question. It's a question that we can. I mean, it's a decision that we have to make all together in city, including the tax authorities, including maybe the police officers, etc., etc., etc. So our responsibility was to provide the city with the data. What kind of decisions we will make, I mean, we're still discussing it. I mean, but it's a real challenge. How we tackle, how we address those underlying reasons of why people are working illegally. And it's not only a matter of the city. I mean, it's not a separate issue. We have to work with the Ministry of different ministries. Ministry of Health, Ministry of Employment, etc., etc. So it's a government level issue. I mean, I'm not sure if I just addressed your question.
So, well, just one follow-up question. So in this issue of privacy and security, we can identify a lot of folks in the informal economy using private data. I'm just curious, when you start to use that data, whether you drive them further underground, and what are the rules you think about managing that data?
Well, first of all, if you talk about the privacy, private information, all those data, they're stored in government databases, official databases. We have a very, serious legislation governing the access to those databases. If you are a private institution, you cannot get data without passing through a very serious procedure. So the same goes for government institutions. I mean, when we get those data, of course, we obtain certain licenses and consents from the owners of those databases. And we can share, when we share it, I mean, with the city authorities, of course, we will bear responsibility for the final results.
So let me ask the councillor and then ask you this from, in part from the audience, in part from me. So, you know, I've been at this long enough. I was in the early days of the open data world in New York City and the like, and that was back in a time where agencies checked the box and says our data is open and moved on to something else, right? You're inherent in both of your presentations is the responsibility of the government to visualize the data, maybe map the data and then in a way that encourages its utilization. So first you, the councilor, then the chairman. So how do you think about the role of the city in data governance insofar as that governance should include visualization and tools that allow residents to engage with that data?
Well, you know, if you have an app, and like what I was saying earlier about an app that would help the disabled in some way, that app has to go back through to our data system to be able to give the information back to the app. So I think when you say about visualization, we're always thinking, what can we do to help the public more? So I think, I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, but what's the point of having data if you can't give it back?
So if you're using 3D tools for planning purposes,
yes.
How do you train residents on how to use those 3D tools?
Well, most of it is through our website, and there's an app, or, you know, once you get to the website, you can digitally work your way through it. And many a developer might think, oh, I'm going to put up a 60-storey building, and they do it in Melbourne, and it might overshadow our river. We have a policy that there is no overshadowing of the river. So if you have that as a display, and the developer, before it gets to the planning permit stage, can say, okay, if I drop that down to 50 stories, it's not going to overshadow the river. And that is all done visually, like, you know, on a website. So it is so helpful to so many people. I don't know why we didn't think of it earlier.
And Chairman, how do you using data for land use planning purposes? So you showed us how you're going to predict where the next school occurs. Do residents participate in discussions based on those visualization tools?
Well, the land use issue is a very serious issue. I mean, it's a probably problematic for all the countries of post-Soviet republics. It's a huge thing to sit on the same table the transportation authorities, the land authorities, and smart city authorities. I mean, they all report to different people. And it's a huge challenge to sit them on the same table and to make the decision which is in the best interest of the city and the citizens. So we are working on this. And this is one of the things which we suggested to the mayor, how we should tackle it. The first thing, do people participate in the final decision making? Not yet really, not yet, but we're on the way. And what I see in the countries which we visit, especially in Barcelona, and I visit Vienna and Seoul, from Asia to Europe, citizen engagement and involvement of people is becoming more and more and more important. And in Barcelona, for example, they told me yesterday that 80% of recommendations of requests of citizens, they are somehow met this way or another.
In Melbourne, do you have somebody, what's the name of the job of the person responsible for privacy and security and integrity in the data? How is the office set up in the city of Melbourne?
Well, in the Smart City office, there's 40 people.
14?
40.
40.
40. And in that 40, and they have a budget of $2 million. And they take in our governance, our finance, our IT, our smart city programmers. So there's a combination of all those skills put into one office. It works by getting the smartest people in the council to be in this particular office. And not everyone can do the role, but we do get the best of our people in there. So we're covered right across the board.
So there are a set of questions here that apply to both of you, which is, you both talk about projects where some of the data may be in the government, some of the data may be in the private sector. So how do you get that data from the private sector? How do you negotiate the rules? How do you aggregate the data? Just generally talk to us about how data is governed that comes from important parties outside of government. Either one of you.
Well, I would say most of ours comes from the universities, our extra data, or our maybe private enterprise not as much. We rely heavily on the university and their acumen to be able to give us, and it's also very good for the students. I mean, we can give them projects to work through, but basically, when we talk about partnerships, it's partnerships with universities.
Well, the system that I mentioned in my presentation, we gather data from 54 different databases, of which 18 are private. I mean, how do we get those data? I mean, technically, it's not difficult. As long as there is a legal consent of the owner of the database. And our system, it allows us to collect all different kind of data and to process and analyze.
So is your energy company state-owned or privately owned, for example? Energy.
State-owned.
And so but you're a different entity from the energy company,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So do you have an official data sharing agreement? It's like a number of the things you show, this is a question here, involve like energy modeling and the like. So just talk to us a little bit about what's that relationship? Is that a formal data feed? How does that relationship work?
I mean, we're all under the same umbrella, the mayor. So, and our approach is that all those data generated by city-owned companies or entities, they should be shared freely.
And what's the answer in Melbourne? Do you have formal data sharing with like your energy company?
No.
No.
No. The local government as a capital city doesn't really own anything. We have two subsidiaries, which is our market, and a citywide, which is our waste collection. But as a local government, we don't own. The state government does.
And how do you get
No.
how do you get information from the non-state-owned?
With a lot of difficulty,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah. And in your efforts, another question: have any of your, well, either one of your efforts, have any of your entrepreneurs monetized their products? Right? Have you started with an open data platform, encouraged entrepreneurship, and it's resulted in a spin-off business of some sort?
We are just about to walk that path. We believe now that with 200 data sets that we've established, we have something to actually sell to other private enterprises. It's going to take a council resolution and a lot of talking from Smart City Office to achieve this, but we are walking the journey.
So we have 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman. What's the most important smart city application in Astana that you didn't mention?
Smart city application. I mean, basically two projects. We launched a first of its kind in the area of IT and security. It's a video surveillance system. We're installing up to 10,000 cameras all around the city. We fix the violation of traffic rules and provide general video surveillance. And the second thing, we have a city mobile application. We have around 200,000 downloads already. All the city services, information, entertainment, all in one application, which is called Smart Astana. Please download.
Good. All right, we have a 15-minute break, then we got terrific presentations from Sao Paulo, LA, and moderated by an expert from Oxford. So enjoy your break, and we hope to see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bon dia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to introduce the panel on data governance. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organization of the Smart City Expo in Barcelona for inviting me here. I would like to say that last year I was a speaker in the Smart City, and since then, I would like to point out that Barcelona is doing an amazing job on the topic that we are going to discuss. Just in order to introduce the speakers, just a brief comment on the topic itself, because I think that cities has always been information-rich environments. But we should also point it out that some tensions are arising that they are concerned and regarding on ethical issues and commercial issues between the private and the public sector. I think that the previous session, I was taking some notes. It was very inspiring presentations and very good discussion, but maybe it was very much focused on how to make open the public data. I would like to also include and complement this section with how to negotiate with the private sector. And mainly because I would like to point out that I don't know if you have realized, but I'm the only European on the stage in the program. Which means that I should just mention two things. First of all, that since May this year, we have a GDPR in Europe. And since yesterday, yesterday was signed an agreement that is called Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. And there are two main European cities, Amsterdam and Barcelona, led by Barcelona, but also New York City. So without any further introduction, I would like to introduce the first speaker. We have two speakers from Europe, from America, from the global north, from the global south. I think this distinction is important to address. We have a speaker from LA, and we have the second speaker is going to be from Sao Paulo. So I think it's quite a city of 4 million people, LA, and of 12 million people Sao Paulo. So I mean, demography is going to make a difference also with the data discussion. So I would like to ask the next speaker to approach the stage. Sari Ladin Sien, she is the policy strategist currently working as a chief data officer for the city of Los Angeles. She directs the team, the data team within the mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation, and oversees the Mayor Garcetti's vision for a more responsive and data-informed in Los Angeles. And I think that the two presentations are very well aligned, but I would like to point out that the presentation is going to focus on how to train, how to use education to prepare the communities to the disruption of data, and is why she's going to talk about data literacy, among other things. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Move this down a little bit. Thank you so much to the organizers of the Smart Cities Expo for having us here. On behalf of the City of Los Angeles and Mayor Garcetti, I'm honored to be speaking about data today and what we're doing to further data literacy and create pathways for new forms of civic engagement in the City of Los Angeles. And thank you, Igor, for that kind introduction. My name is Sari Ladin Sien, and I'm the Chief Data Officer for the City of Los Angeles. Some of you might be wondering, what does that mean? What is a Chief Data Officer? Well, Mayor Garcetti appointed a data officer to improve city operations, increase civic engagement, and spur creative thinking through the use of data. Data was top of mind for Mayor Garcetti's from the first day he took office. He took office in July 2013, and in December of that year, he launched his Open Data Executive Order, which encouraged and mandated that all of our departments share data from all corners of government into a cloud-based platform that's accessible, discoverable, and machine-readable, so that residents, businesses, academia, anyone else, journalists, can use data more effectively about their city to inform the work that they're doing. So what makes data so powerful? Well, making raw data available brings what's happening on our city blocks and city hall to life. Through open data, we can develop new pathways for civic engagement. We engage with our residents through digital tools that increase the way residents engage with us. One example of that is our service request application. It's called MyLA311. Many cities in the US have a way for you to communicate directly when you need a pothole repaired or you notice graffiti that should be removed. And what we've done is make all of that data then back accessible and open to the public. It's regularly updated, it's automated every day and refreshed, and this is big data. We're talking about millions and millions of rows of information about services being requested across the city. This lets our residents really understand what kinds of services are being requested where, and what does that really mean? How do we notice where collective efficacy is happening? Where are people more engaged with the city and contributing and advocating for their blocks, and where are they not? You can also collect your own data through applications that we've created on our GeoHub. It's our geospatial platform. We're the first city to institute that platform, and this is a place where residents can get involved, collect data on the happiness of their neighborhoods, on the safety of their streets, and really engage directly with us. So we're not the only ones feeding our data to them, but they're informing us as well. Another way that open data is powerful is through promoting innovation among entrepreneurs and businesses. Professor and Mayor Goldsmith spoke to this earlier. It's a measure of success for us that we are now seeing entrepreneurs using our data to create more economic development in the city of Los Angeles. We love to see businesses and startups using city data for their products. Whether it's a real estate intelligence tool that draws on permitting and zoning data, or a street sweeper application that warns you before you get that ticket, we love to see entrepreneurship succeed with city data. Another way that data is powerful for us is through leveraging this great asset, public information. We think of data as a service, and our residents are encouraged to explore data to see how they can use it for their personal and professional endeavors. We're also very focused on getting feedback on our data. So we do release it in the raw format as well as contextual format through story maps and other applications. And we're always listening to hear if residents are using this data. We're running analytics on our applications and platforms. And then we also have an open mailbox to receive public requests for new data, which we then make sure to turn around within a timely time frame. And lastly, we work to use data to foster more creative problem solving with the community at the forefront. So we think that data is an amazing vehicle for bringing more diverse voices to government and opening the conversation at the table. So really listening to what residents need. What are their concerns? How can they engage more on applications? How can they vote up and vote down different developments or things like that? There's so much potential with our applications for them to comment and share all of that information. It's also a way for them to delve into the data themselves and tell us what they're seeing. One of Mayor Garcetti's passions is that people use that data to let us know what problems are happening in their neighborhood. It's a way to crowdsource everything that's going on in the city. So when we talk about data, what we're really talking about is data-smart governing. And we're focusing on these three areas: intelligent operations, which means to track it. So how do you make things happen with more precision and lasting impact? This is very focused on the STAT model of using data to identify a gap, deploy resources, and track progress, and then repeat that process again and again. A good example of this is our Clean Streets efforts. So we have an initiative in the city where we're now collecting data on every block of the street on how clean that street is, based on a score related to how much rubbish and weeds and other things are on that street. And we are using data to deploy resources to the streets that are dirtiest in the city. Since launching that, we've reduced the number of dirty streets by over 90% in the city of Los Angeles. And we have less than 1% of our streets that continue to be persistently dirty each quarter. And we are working to get to 0. We find that this effort to use dashboarding and intelligent operations is very effective. Another way that we're using data is to create more responsive and equitable services. So focusing on analyzing our information, layering demographic data, inequality, other data on top of each other to really identify where are the areas in highest need where we should be deploying more resources. We're doing a lot of work in the homelessness arena around this. And lastly, sharing your data story. So civic engagement is a huge component of open data, as I mentioned before. And we're really focused on creating together with the community and helping them use data to advocate for what's going on their blocks. So we have two exciting data platforms. This is where the magic happens. So our first platform was launched in 2014. It's our open data portal. It's where we have, as I mentioned, our service request data, all of our public safety data. It's very efficient for big data that has many, many rows. And then we have our GeoHub, which is first of its kind geospatial platform that really creates an engaging sharing application for residents, universities, other partners to bring together spatial information and really think about how do we engage with the community collaboratively on this kind of platform. What kind of information can we get on the specific block? How can we identify which blocks have persistent crime on them? How does that relate to other social indicators? We can do all of that now using mapping technology. And we work on both of these data platforms collaboratively together. And as of course, you can't just have data for data's sake. So a lot of our work on our team is to create applications that show the value of data so that residents that perhaps feel overwhelmed by just looking at data in rows and columns can really engage with information. We have our mayor's dashboard, which shows his key performance indicators, what he's monitoring day to day. We've got, as I mentioned, our clean streets, which shows a map where you can put in your address and find out if your neighborhood, your block, is clean, somewhat clean, or dirty, and how that's been gradually transformed over the years. We also monitor all of the activity on all of our city websites. We're happy to share that our most trafficked website is always the library's website, which is fantastic for us. And we get to see where are people spending their time, how much time are they spending on our websites. This is a great way for us to really identify that digital customer service and how we can improve that. And so the second part of my presentation, I'm going to focus on what it means really to be bringing data to the people. So in the US, the open data movement is now, I guess, a teenager. We've been focused on this for a number of years, maybe a toddler. And for the first few years, what we've been focusing on a lot is making these platforms possible, making sure all the API endpoints are working and functional. But we haven't done as much on bringing data into the community. You may not be surprised by this, but government isn't a digital marketing company. We're not very good at telling people where to find what they need. And so even though we do everything we can to broadcast all this amazing resources that they can use, if we're not going into the community and physically showing people through workshops in person, it's hard to expect that all of our residents are going to be engaged. And so I'm excited to share a few initiatives that we launched in the past year that are really allowing us to take everyone on this data magic carpet ride. So we started with data literacy trainings. We've had over 10 data literacy trainings in the past year in combination with our Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. The reason for that synergy is because we're focused on training individuals that are already civically minded, that are interested in joining a volunteer neighborhood council, and may not have the resources to really engage with data that maybe they don't even know what that word really means. And so we think that these are the building blocks for creating a more informed society that then can talk about digital rights, that then can understand what it means to accept terms on Facebook. It starts with really understanding how is the government using data to improve cities. So we've launched these trainings. They last about an hour and a half. We show our 2 data platforms. And we've gotten such an amazing turnout. They sell out completely that we've now decided to do a 3-year initiative where we've partnered with a local university, Cal State Los Angeles, and a nonprofit umbrella organization, where we're now finding the synergy between students, residents, and advocates, and bringing them all together to teach them the data skills that they need. The students will be taught how to use data inside a classroom and applying what they learn to a specific nonprofit client that has a mission on improving the city they live in. Another amazing, I think amazing initiative that we've started is called Data Angels. So this is people on the other side of the spectrum. They're incredibly data skilled, very advanced users, but maybe are not engaging with the city. They just don't know where to get started. They're probably not going to join a neighborhood council. And so what we've done is created a pro bono volunteer base of data scientists that are working at companies in Silicon Beach and Los Angeles and finding a way for them to engage with the city itself. And so they give us about 3 to 4 hours a week, and we have identified 5 projects for them to start with. So we have a cohort working with us from September to January, and then we'll reflect on the first batch and start it again in the springtime. These are just a few examples of what we're doing in Los Angeles to grow pathways for data literacy. Thank you again for hosting me here, and please do stay in touch if you have questions. Thank you.
You can maybe take a seat. Thank you very much for your good presentation. While we are preparing the second one, I would like to make just a comment, and I think that usage of data and how to make data available in open platforms is one of the part, but I think that as we can see, and we are going to see also in Sao Paulo, I think that the innovation in this subject at the moment is delivering this data to citizens means that we need to take into account multi-stakeholders framework. That means that we should understand citizens more than decision makers, than data providers itself. So we are going to see now in Sao Paulo how, with the same concept of data literacy, how important it is to educate citizens in order to use their data. Please, Mariana Sampaio, she's currently the Deputy Secretary of Innovation and Technology at Sao Paulo Municipality, and she's been working in law firms in the last for 10 years, and she used to be a civil servant before taking the role of the Deputy Secretary. Please.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Mariana Sampaio, as Igor said. I would like to start by thanking the organization of the event for having me here. It's such an honor to be here and to talk a little bit about the work we've been doing at São Paulo City Hall. I would also like to greet Igor and Sari. For me, it's really important to share this panel with a woman. It's such an honor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work we've been doing in São Paulo concerning government as platform for a smarter city. So when you think about a smart city, what comes to your mind? I don't know, perhaps IoT, smart buildings, smart lamps, lots of data. Finally put the citizen into the center of decisions. Well, but when you look inside public administration, things are pretty much still the same. That means we're still making a lot of paper business decision making. So we can do things in different ways. We can have different results if we keep doing things in the same way. That's why I like this quote so much. It's, as the city of City Hall replaces paper-based city government, cities will have to leave behind the governance structures that have served them for over 100 years. So when I'm talking about government as a platform, I'm talking about organizational change. We need to change things inside public administration so we can deliver better public services to the population. We need to teach them how to deal with big data. So my presentation today is going to be divided in 3 parts. First of all, I'm going to tell a little bit about the government as platform model as we've been working inside São Paulo City Hall. After that, I'm going to tell you about our experience or how we turned this model into practice. I'm going to tell you about your experience of São Paulo City Hall. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit for the challenges for our smarter São Paulo. And I want you to all have in mind that Brazil is still a developed country, and we have a lot of inequality. So what may seem quite simple for you are still big challenges for us. So what does it mean when I tell you government as a platform model? Well, it's not a digital platform, as we may think, but it's mainly a place where people can work together. Public administration everywhere is really insulated, but I think in Brazil this is especially insulated. So people who work in public administration are locked out into their buildings, working alone and doing a lot of decisions alone without even asking to the citizens what they want or what they need. So when you talk about government as a platform, we're talking about civil servants and citizens working together in some places based on data and based on wicked problems to think challenges and create solutions. So then we can provide, we change the way we think about public policy, and we can deliver better public service, because this for us is a smart city. It's better public services. It's not about a lot of technology, because technology is a mean, not an end. Well, we have nowadays 3 innovation labs at São Paulo City Hall, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them. The first one is also my favorite. It's 011 Lab. 011 is the code area for São Paulo. And we want, with 0 Lab, promote change in the way of thinking and making public policy inside the public administration. currently, we have running 4 or 5 projects inside Zero on the lab. I picked the one, and I was really nice that I picked this one because I think it talks a lot with what about Sarah just told us, because we are now dealing with data from citizen attendance. Every day we got at São Paulo 156, it's like the 311 for United States, 18,000 calls. Every day we have 18,000 people calling at City Hall to complain or to ask for public services. So it's a lot of data, and we need to work on that to understand what's happening in the city. But we don't want to work on the data alone. We want to work with the data with the citizens that are making their demand for us. So we are working together with civil services and cities to develop and to improve our citizen attendance. And it's nice because it also works like a moment to develop capacities, because civil servants are used to do things the same way. So it's a moment to learn how to draw problems, focus on people, to experiment, to know data, and to operate. So it's a capacity building as well. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to improve our web portal. We are now prototyping a new web service to citizen attendant based on the citizen experience. We literally took our laptops and we went to the streets and to watch the citizens using our website, because sometimes they cannot even understand the website, so they can make his own demands. So it's that we're doing right now. And when we have a new web portal, it will be a better one, and it will serve the citizen better before spending a lot of public money to develop something that the citizen won't even understand. The second one is our innovation for mobility. And now it's interesting to see, because in the 011, we have civil servants and citizens interacting. When you talk about MobLab, we're talking about civil servants for public companies transportation, like SP Trans, ICT, interacting also with citizens, but also with developers, with hackers, and with startups to develop some solutions. We have in São Paulo 15,000 buses, all of them with a GPS, so we open at the data, so people can develop solutions for public transportation based on the data. What happened? That nowadays we have a lot of apps in São Paulo, so you can check if your bus is coming, you can check where you want to go without City Hall spending not even $1. And besides that, MobiLab, which is the lab, also hosts programs, residence programs, and we have some startups that keeps inside there to work. The last one, the first two ones are under our responsibility as Innovation and Technology Secretary. This last one, Pátio Digital, it's a responsibility of Secretary of Education of São Paulo. And here we also have actors interacting, but now we don't have enterprises interacting, because when you talk about education, we talk about open source innovation. So here we have civil servants interacting with students, with makers, with stakeholders, even with the parents of the children. And we are doing this initially to improve the quality of the meals children have every day in schools at São Paulo. São Paulo City Hall serves every day over 2 million meals to kids to go to the public schools. So, and the parents didn't even used to know what the children were going to eat that day. So we opened the data, and nowadays we have some apps to help the parents and to even give some transparency, so people can know what's happening inside the public schools in São Paulo. Of course, we still have a lot of changes for our Smarter São Paulo. The first one is the new governance, because it's collaborative and it's transversal. So it's hard to make people understand inside public administration that we need to work together and we need to work in a transversal way. Because if we don't do anything, people keep doing the work inside boxes and they don't talk to each other. So it's hard from, okay, if you want to teach people how to work with data, we need to work together, we need to speak the same language, we need to speak to the citizen. Now, also it's hard for us to strengthen the culture of innovation in government, because, let's be sincere, people don't like innovation. People like to do things in the same way. And sometimes when people become a public servant, they became a public servant because they don't want to change. So then we create an innovation and technology secretary to change things. So everybody was frightened. Oh my God, now we're going to change things. We don't want change. We want to do things the same thing. And we need to show them that changing is important and working with data is important, and we're going to deliver better public service if we do that. And I think at least the most difficult challenge is to measure the impact of the results. I think everybody who is working with innovation had this big challenge to deal, because innovation, it's impossible to measure the way we measure traditional public policies. So it's like, for me, it's like the santo graal of evaluation, how to discover how to deal and how to measure innovation. So this is what we've been doing. I will be glad to hear your answers. Thank you.
Well, so I'm going to kick off the possibly the relevant part of the panel, which is how we are going to connect the two presentations with your interests, expectations, comments, even criticism. So what I'm going to do in the time, thank you very much, that we have for this debate, I'm going to ask one question per each of you.
Okay.
And then I'm going to open the floor for discussion. So my summary, or my kind of interpretation about the two cases, is that they're quite similar. We talked about that early in the morning, and when we were preparing the session, they say, oh, we have almost the same title. I said, oh, well, this is not bad, as long as it's going to be coherent. So we talk about platform, we talk about how to use data, and something that you both mentioned, at least I think that the key thing, is education, data literacy through labs, in your case, to train, to educate citizens. But the flip side of this, in my opinion, and I think that you said just in the last sentence, is the impact. With experimentation and with very small scale interventions, sometimes that we cannot just scale up and we cannot even measure the impact of this. So I would like to start with Shari, with your presentation. My question is very straightforward. How you identify stakeholders in this multi-stakeholder approach that you have in LA? I mean, we mentioned in the morning the issue of the crime, for example, in LA, and some kind of issues that you are having in LA, regardless of the amount of data that you are gathering at the moment. So how you are approaching from the municipality, from the City Council of Los Angeles, where to start and who to start with, I would say.
It's a great question. So I think a big thing for us is that I should have told you all that our team is right now me and one other person. So we're quite small, and so a lot of our work is about really identifying stakeholders, because so much of what we want to achieve can't be done without our partnerships. A huge partner for us has always been academia. We're lucky to be surrounded by incredible research institutions in the Los Angeles area, and they are themselves hungry for data for research and hungry for ways to help get their students engaged in what's going on around them. And when it came to identifying a partner for the data literacy project, it was a no-brainer for us. Cal State Los Angeles is a public university where 70% of the students are coming from their first generation going to college, and most of them are within a 10-mile radius of the city of Los Angeles. So they are already residents of Los Angeles to some extent. And so these are kids that are growing up in Los Angeles, are already thinking about how can they better engage with their city. And so for us, it was just important to find champions at that institution that can really collaborate with us and think creatively about, you know, bringing in a city into their classroom, bringing in nonprofits into their classroom and making that happen. And then when it came to identifying, you know, the community groups, that was also a very interesting process, because what we ended up working with is we're working with a partner called Community Partners. They are themselves an intermediary where they are a nonprofit that provides financial consulting and services to 170 nonprofits. And so for us, because of our size, we're trying to find institutions that can multiply and quantify and scale our work. And so working with an intermediary nonprofit that has a portfolio of 170 nonprofits was a way for us to engage. And so for the first year, we're starting in January, our classroom, and we're focusing on 3 themes: social equity, urban environment, and the arts. And so we have identified nonprofits within each of those themes, and my team has worked on creating a data set, a curated data list of data sets that fit into those themes. And what's happening is we're not only going to be training the students, but we're actually going to the nonprofits as well and giving them these skills, because most of them are very small and they don't have a data analyst on staff. And so the students, it's a train the trader model where the students themselves will be then getting paid internships through the grants to work at these nonprofits in the summer and really continue the work.
And I think that this is also connected with something that I think that it was really good idea, which is the data angels that you mentioned. I mean, people just volunteering doing that. I mean, entrepreneurship with the idea of the economic entrepreneurship, but also social entrepreneurship in volunteerism. And this, I mean, this is connected with a question of the audience that is asking what is the LA and Sao Paulo strategy on the type of data to open up which is attractive for new businesses. Something that I'm trying to include little by little in the conversation, and I'm going to ask exactly to Mariana, which is, she mentioned that you have the fact of the 15,000 buses of the public transport, but we've been also talking, we didn't mention that in the presentation, but we are complementing somehow what it has been said in the presentation, that the experience with Uber.
Yes.
I'm saying that because, as we know, Barcelona is very famous, popular, because the problems, the conflicts with Uber. So let's go that always they are not, I mean, we have all sometimes very bad cases, but there are some positive cases like the one in Sao Paulo, so please.
Yes, we do. So Uber arrived and people wanted to use it because taxi cabs in Sao Paulo are expensive. So people want to use Uber, and we at the City Hall were afraid, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because we don't want lots of cars inside the city. We want more public transportation. So what we can do? So we came out with a regulation, which is a very good one, because we tax Uber based on the kilometers that they rode inside the city. It's not only Uber, it's about all the apps concerning mobility, because we also have 99 in São Paulo. So that's what we do. And it's interesting because we did it in a way that, okay, how do we want Uber to go inside the city? So in the downtown area, it's more expensive. If Uber go downtown area, they pay more for São Paulo City Hall. And if they go far away from downtown to the really poor areas where we have more inequality, it's cheaper for Uber. So we're trying to make them to go to the far away from downtown. And it's also cheaper if Uber have a woman driving. So because we're also concerned with gender questions. So that's how we managed to deal with them.
Thank you very much. This is just a nice, the question that I'm going to make, and I'm going to open the floor for discussion. That is, for me, something that is a key for this panel is this question is, how can city governments and also private companies work together to help, and I would say to protect the citizens' digital rights, to choose how their data could be shared, which data could be shared, which data cannot be shared. I mean, and it's why these processes that is opening up different kind of citizen engagement, I think that they could help this process. So I'm going to open the floor for discussion, so please raise your hand if you have any question, and we have like 7 minutes to do it. Yes, one question in the back.
Hi, I'm Mandar Mushrafzadeh from Technical University of Munich. My question is specifically for
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
for Los Angeles regarding the GeoHub and in general open data platform. How much you are using the open standards like from ISO or OGC, which is especially for the geospatial data? How much you are using standards and also encouraging different businesses to establish their, for example, softwares using the open standards?
Thank you for that question. So the question was about standards, and it's a great question. We do data inventories, so every year we review all of the data sets that we have to ensure that they are compliant with the standards, and also that they are presenting metadata that's clear and accessible to anyone to understand. One of the issues with open data is that a lot of it is generated from a database, and so the columns, if you're just pushing it out, they make no sense. And so you need to have a person that's going to be translating so that a researcher can understand what AXE means and spell it out and provide a definition. And so that's a lot of the work that we do. It's painstakingly labor intensive, of course, because it's about translating something that was pushed out and generated automatically into something accessible. We also follow the standards that are created through the Open Data Census, which is something that every city can participate in. And the US has its own little contingent, and we make sure that our data sets are compliant when it comes to crime data, zoning information, a number of other data sets that they look at that are the most popular data sets. I will be honest with you, there are departments that are maybe a little more sensitive and not interested in using a Creative Commons licensing, for example, that is completely open and transparent. Because if you think about what our departments are going through, is they're putting in so much of their time and effort to organizing and cleaning and cleansing this information to then make it free to everybody, including businesses, is a difficult thing for them sometimes. And so that's been, kind of a dance over the years to kind of see, well, what are the options for cities to monetize data? We haven't officially had any data sets that we've monetized yet, but it is something that should be on everyone's horizon when it is a particular issue.
In this sense, there are some questions exactly about this thing that they are like, are the data sets that you, Sao Paulo and LA are using just publicly owned sources, or they are also from privately owned sources? How you are dealing with this, the public sources or private sources of data?
Yeah, in São Paulo nowadays we have public sources. I'm sorry. In São Paulo nowadays we have public sources of data, and what is public doesn't concern the privacy of the citizen. We are opening. We still have a lot of work to do. We still have a few open data, but our intention is to open them in open sources.
We also use private and public data sources. If you think about sensor information, a lot of that is actually collected by contractors that we work with. So our parking meter sensor data that we've now made public this year is actually collected by a private company, but it's our data.
Yes.
Any company that's using our public streets, we believe should be giving us the data, and so that is our policy.
We have one question on the left. Any other, because we should start wrapping up. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Xiaoying from China. Actually, I have one question also about the resources, about the data openness. And because nowadays the majority of the citizens serve as the users, or they receiving data passively, or they giving some of the demands, but can they be involved in the early stage of the data? Like they can also donating their own data as well to constitute one of the sources of the private sources as well. Can they be involved in an early stage? like for the citizens? Thank you.
We have a new initiative that one of our university partners has launched, where IoT data will be shared on a private platform that companies will buy into and the city will have rights to, and citizens can opt into that platform to be sharing non-identifiable information. So that is a new thing that we will be launching. It's called i3 in the city of Los Angeles. And then when donating their time, donating their data, a lot of what we get is public requests for data. And we as a city are compliant under the California Public Records Act request to comply and provide that data.
Any other question? Because we have 2 minutes to finish the panel. There are some questions about very direct, very straightforward for you.
Okay.
Sao Paulo, only taxes, Uber and similar, or also city taxes?
Yes, we nowadays we have an app from City Hall. So we have Uber, you have 99, that it's private apps, and City Hall just launched the app from the city cabs. So if you are a cab driver and you want to also use an app to get more passengers, you can download the app from City Hall and use it.
Okay, any other question on the... Okay, I would like to close down, wrapping up with 3 main points, just in 1 minute. And is how relevant is in data governance to start thinking about multi-stakeholder as a complex entity that should be managed at the city with the city authorities. The second one, and maybe we didn't talk about this, I mean, something that we talk about how to manage the open data platforms and how to collect data, but it's the security and privacy issues that is, at the moment, is the so-called case, but also something about the ownership of data. Right now, we've been start talking about how the distinction between private, publicly owned data or private owned data. Lastly, and is how cities are going to set up platforms, because we are using all the time Uber, we are using even in Barcelona Cabify, Airbnb is very famous, and also the big tech company, Facebook, Google, and so on and so forth. So there is a movement at the moment, I mean, I'm trying to connect with my introduction, that they are suggesting cooperative platforms and solutions in cities. So I think that this next year is going to be the time to discuss about this. The agenda is endless, so I'm going to welcome the chair to close the session. Thank you.
Let's thank our panel for a great session. Thank you very much. So thanks for joining us this morning. We hope that it's helped you think about data governance. One thing that comes through, I think, loud and clear is that as we increasingly look at the role of City Hall, it's City Hall as a catalyst of a set of assets that are in the community. So it's operating a network, so its definition of open data, its definition of open data governance is one that deals with City Hall as a platform, and it's not just one platform, but it's a platform of platforms. And so the conversation about user experience, the conversation about changing the culture of public employees, the conversation about protecting that data and utilizing that data and driving that data for higher quality services has been featured through all of our presenters today, and we hope you have a better sense of the many opportunities that are available to change your cities. Thank you very much, and we're adjourned.